Welcome to the Get Fit With Me Expanding Your Physical and Mental Fitness group. This group is for individuals who are ready to expand both their physical and mental fitness while using nutrition to support you all along the way. We create a community in this group, so some of you may see that when you chime in and you kind of tune in as you're scrolling through Facebook, some days it's just me up here, and there's other days where there's other people on the screen with me. And the fun part is there is always that Zoom link right above me that all of these calls, anyone is in this group is welcome to jump in on these calls. And when we have a smaller group, you get one-on-one coaching essentially, which is really fun, especially if you're someone who's trying to work through something, you've really been dealing with something for a while, and you really want to ask those questions and get that one-on-one attention. Use that Zoom link above, jump in on Thursdays and use these calls as kind of a one-on-one coaching session for you. So we are here every Thursday at noon for either a physical fitness, a mental fitness, or a nutrition training. I try to alternate each week so that if there's a week where you guys are always wanting to tune into the nutrition, you kind of have, I kind of have a battle rhythm going. So you know the third Wednesday is kind of nutrition, or Thursday is usually nutrition. Then we have physical fitness, mental fitness, and then we also have a move and learn workshop that we are having in 2 weeks, which is where we actually get outside and we move our bodies. So today we are focused more on that physical fitness portion. And today's training was inspired by April. She reached out, April and I have worked together in the past, and she's one of the amazing ladies in this group. And she reached out a couple months ago now, and she asked about heart rate and where should my heart rate be? How do I track that? What should I be looking for? She asked a bunch of great questions, which then meant might as well do a training because I can guarantee she's not the only one with these questions. So I'm going to drop that Zoom link in the comments over here. So if you are watching on Facebook and you want to jump on and ask some questions, feel free to use that Zoom link, jump right in the group. I do also understand that not everyone can be on a Zoom call because it is noon. Some of you are taking your lunch break, some of you are working, some of you are driving to somewhere. So with that being the case, if you are watching live right now, drop hashtag live. And if you are watching the replay later on, whether it's this weekend, it's Saturday, happy Saturday morning people who are getting the replay, drop hashtag replay and just let us know who you are, where you're from, and what questions around heart rate do you have, if you have any. And if you don't have any, let us know kind of how you track your heart rate or if you even pay attention to your heart rate. Drop that in the chat. Remember, these chat lives on. So if I don't see it on Saturday, when I look at there on Sunday, I will go in and I will comment back. So don't be afraid that, oh, I'm going to put something in there and she's not going to respond. No, every comment gets a response or an acknowledgement of some sort. So if you ask a question, you will get a response. So I also want to give a huge thank you to Kelly this week for inviting people into the group. The best way to thank me for hosting these trainings is inviting others who you think would benefit. Whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, maybe it's a colleague, whoever it may be, if you think that they could benefit from something you've heard in here, invite them into the group. It is a group for everybody. As long as you want to expand your physical fitness, your mental fitness, and your nutrition, and find balance between them all, you're in the right spot. And we create community in here. We create connection. And I love these calls because it gives me an opportunity to teach you guys and have real conversation rather than just posting the information. Hello, Jamie. We have her on live. Do I really need to use my monitor when working out? Awesome question. So I will answer that later on. And first, I'm going to say, if you have a monitor, use it. It's great because it kind of tracks your stuff for you. But if you don't have it, not the end of the world. There's other ways to track your heart rate. So perfect question. And I will definitely touch on that later. So as a reminder, you get the most out by clicking that Zoom link and jumping in. And if not, comment and follow along in the chat, just like Jamie and Kelly are doing right now. So why is heart rate important? So this came up because there's a bunch of different zones that you can be in. And you guys might have heard there's fat burning, there's cardio, there's all these zones, and there's all these like spins on which zone you're in and when you're burning the most calories and all of these things that we're hearing out there. And honestly, I'm just going to keep it pretty simple today. I have a graphic to show you that if you want the graphic that I've created, you can drop the word zone and I will send it to you. I've actually used it for Lois, who is in this group. As I was creating this training, I remember I did this for her. Or I did a mock one for her a while back. So I've created another one with a mock person, so you guys can see how I work through these calculations and where you fall. So why should I care about my heart rate? Keeping track of your heart rate can give you an insight into your fitness level, your heart health, and your emotional health. So first, I want you to think about your resting heart rate. Any of you who have watches, I know if I look down at my watch, mine is at 87, and that isn't because I am in front of the screen right now and I'm talking to you, and this is not a resting state for me. For those of you who may just be listening to the podcast, or you're just listening and you're not really participating, you're just kind of sitting there, your resting heart rate it lets you know how effectively your heart is working when you are literally doing nothing but just like breathing and being a person. So if we know what our resting heart rate is and we know our zones, we can make sure that we're training in an effective way and that our health and that our cardiovascular health is like in a good spot. Because there are people, I have clients who have a really high resting heart rate and they're actually on medication to bring it down. And I have clients who have a really low resting heart rate. So we want to kind of know, where do you sit and what is normal for you? So if all of a sudden you see your resting heart rate's high, okay, that's kind of a red flag. Or if you start to see your resting heart rate is really low, it's kind of a red flag. You kind of want to know what your range is. So I'm going to be teaching you how to check your resting heart rate today. Another reason that you should care about your heart rate zones is it can be a really good way to see how effective you are at exercising. Like I said, if you want to train a certain way and you want to work on endurance, you don't need to be working at your max heart rate the entire time. You're not going to hit that endurance factor. There is a certain range that you want to stay in between if you want to work on your endurance. If you want to work on sprints, there's a certain heart rate you want to stay in between. So by knowing those heart rates ranges, you are able to train effectively based on what you're training for, rather than just going out there and doing willy-nilly stuff. I do want to remind you though, that just like any other data we collect, whether it's your calories, whether it's your weight, whether it's your heart rate, whether it's your sleep, whatever data you're collecting, it's just data. It's things to be aware of, but it's not something to obsess over. So if you find yourself starting to obsess over your heart rate, that's a good time to reach out to me and ask for some help, or to really just acknowledge it and step away and say, okay, I'm not going to track my heart rate today. I have clients that do this with the scale, is we completely take the scale away, because sometimes we get that obsessiveness of needing to know what these things are. And so if you start to feel that at any point when you start to track your heart rate, just step away from it from a bit, and you can always come back to it. It's just another good tool to use when you're literally just being a person. Yes. What's considered high resting heart rate? Awesome question. So we're actually going to get into that right now. What should your resting heart rate be when you are literally just sitting being a person? And for average adults, it should be anywhere between 60 beats per minute and 100 beats per minute. I'm going to tell you what, my range, depending on the time of the month and my hormones, I fluctuate anywhere between 62 beats per minute and 72 beats per minute. I know that when my resting heart rate is higher than that 72, I probably have a little extra stress. I maybe have had a little too much wine. I've maybe haven't had enough physical activity. There are outside factors that affect that resting heart rate. So I really take into account of, that resting heart rate's really high and it's been really high for a while. What's been going on that has probably led to it? Usually it's an outside factor that I can easily change and switch as soon as I've acknowledged it. So something else that can affect that heart rate, that resting heart rate, is medications you are on, anxiety levels, medical conditions. There's all types of outside factors. And for those of you who are on medication, you probably sit closer to a 60, sometimes like a 55. But that means your medication is doing what it's supposed to be doing. So just kind of keep that in mind, that for adults, it's between 60 and 100 beats per minute is what you want your resting to be. And if you know you're a high, and if you know you're above that 100 or you're below that 100, it's just good to talk to your doctor about it to make sure everything's doing what it's supposed to do, and just kind of give an average of where you usually sit. So when you have a lower resting heart rate, it usually means that your heart muscles are in better condition. So they can move, they can pump blood more effectively than somebody who has a really high resting heart rate, and your heart has to work harder to pump that blood through your body. So thinking through, if I am more active, my resting heart rate is going to be lower. Whereas if I am not doing any activity, my resting heart rate is going to be higher. So a really easy way to start lowering that resting heart rate is just by adding activity into your day. And I'm not saying go and do like 60 to 90 minutes. Just go do 10, 15 minutes every day, and you'll see how activity and movement affect that resting heart rate that we have. And it's overall great for that heart health. So speaking on that, I did want to share, shout out to Karen. Like yesterday in one of our private groups, she shared an awesome article, and it was on my mind, and I will share it here as well, about how our average number of steps correlates with dementia later on, and how the more active we are, the less likely we are to have dementia. It's a really good read, and thinking through correlating that with our health here in our heart. If I'm taking care of my heart now and I'm keeping a lower resting heart rate now in my 20s, and I continue to do that, I am less likely to have to be on medication as I get older. So whether you are in your 20s, you're in your 30s, your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever that may be right now, don't wait till that next year to start. Start movement now, because that movement now is going to help you in the long term. And let's be honest, we all don't want to be taking a bunch of medications when we're older. So if we can just start by incorporating little bits of movement to lower that resting heart rate in between that 60 to 100 range and get it into a comfortable range for you, which remember mine is 62 to 72, you're in a good spot and your heart is doing the right thing and you're doing good things for your body. So next question that I'm going to talk about, and as you listen to this, if you're coming up with insights or things you're like, oh, I have an extended question, just like Jamie's doing, put them in the comments. I am watching that right now. And as you're watching the replay, I will also comment through there as well. So what should my heart rate be while working out? Really, this depends on what you are training for. I kind of mentioned this. If you are training for long endurance running, and the example that I'm going to give here is when I was training for my 25K, we paced ourselves at a 10-minute mile. And a 10-minute mile for us meant, so Sid, Becca, and I, we were running together. And the way we were taught was if we are on pace, we can have a conversation like this, a nice and easy conversation where I'm not breathing really heavily, but I'm also not sitting there giggling and laughing like we're at wine night or we're out at dinner. So it's called the talk test. So if you're not checking your heart rate, you can also use something like that. But for me, that was really easy when I was out on the run. Instead of checking, oh, what's my heart rate at? Okay, we got to slow down. I'm not within my range. Because it is just another factor you have to think about. So really it depends on what you're training for and what the purpose of your movement is. If it is just to move, it's going to be lower. If it's to push it to your max, you want that heart rate to be higher. So we're going to get into those stages so you can really get an understanding for it and see it. And we're going to do some actual calculations for you guys who are on live, so you can see where you fall and where your ranges are. And this is where we're going to use that diagram. So I am going to share my screen here, and I see we have Cherry on here, movement instead of medication. Yes. So ACSM is who I have my certified personal training certification from. And they like to say exercise is medicine. And I fully believe that I can tell if I have not moved my body and I have not taken care of myself, I do not feel well. And as soon as I start kicking those things back into gear, I feel so much better, and it's like a flip of a switch. So this diagram that I'm going to show you, this right here, I want you to drop the word zone if you want it for you. There are going to be numbers on here that are based on a mock person. And that mock person is so that we just have the numbers, but I'm also going to walk through these calculations with you. So let me share screen here. And if you can see this okay, Cherry, I know you're on there, and I think Jamie, you're still there. Let me know that you can see this picture okay. I think I got the share screen working. So heart rate intensity zones. There are technically 5 zones, and those 5 zones, we're going to start with recovery and easy. This right here is also going to be your resting heart rate. So you get used to getting your body moving with minimal stress and exertion. This zone may be used for easy training day, warm up, or cool down. So there's a difference. So when you see here for this person is 68 years old, that it says for them to do a recovery or easy workout, they should have their heart rate between 76 and 91. So for me, when I'm in this range, this could also be your resting heart rate range, but you want to think of when you're moving, not just when you're sitting. So for me, this is when I'm walking from the kitchen down to here, or maybe I'm going to go out and check the mail. It's a very leisurely, low-key stroll. You're not putting a lot of intensity in. You can have a really good conversation. You're laughing. Like it's really easy for you to do this activity. And that's how you know that you're in the recovery and easy stage. And as you see right here, it says 50 to 60% of your max heart rate. I'm going to teach you what your max heart rate is. We're actually going to do this calculation so that you can do these calculations for yourself. Joining while making the kids lunch. Hello, Elena and Cherry. Thank you for letting me know that we can see this. So next step up from recovery and easy is moderate intensity. So this is 60 to 70% of your heart rate max. This stage is known for weight loss and building endurance. So this is that stage where you want to stay in if you want to fat burn, is what people usually say. So this stage right here is when I'm moving around the house a little bit more quickly, is kind of how I think about that, where my ranges fall. And these ranges, your max heart rate is based on how old you are. So I'm going to show you that, like I said, but I want you to just kind of think through some of the activities that are moderate intensity for you so that you can start to get an idea. So aerobic, moderate to vigorous intensity, breathing quickens, but not out of breath, still can have a conversation. So this right here, in that 60 to 80% of my max heart rate, that is where I was when I was training for my 25K and I was running my 25K. I could run and I could have an easy conversation, but I could tell my heart rate was increasing and so was my breathing. This is also something that you stay at for longer periods of time. So if you are cycling for a long time, if you are walking for a long period of time, if you are running, this is not something that's quick that you do in 2 minutes and you're done. This is like 10 to 15 minutes at least and longer. So think about this as like your cardio days, the days where you go get on the treadmill and you go for 30 minutes, because I know some of you do that, or you get on your bike and you just pedal. You want to be in that aerobic stage of 70 to 80% of your heart rate max. So then we move up one more tier and we have our anaerobic, which is intense zone that can only be sustained for short periods of time. Easiest way for me to describe this to you is this is like that 100-meter sprint, where you're at the track and you go from one end to the other end, just that really short in front of the bleachers. That right there, because you're working at 80 to 90% of your heart rate max. It's very short sustained. You cannot sustain it for very long. You are out of breath. You cannot talk during it. And you will feel lots of heavy breathing by the end because it cannot be sustained for long periods of time. Another thing that you can kind of think about is if you are lifting weights and you're not taking breaks in between, you will feel that fatigue set on sooner because you are probably in this stage rather than this stage. And you want to make sure that when we are lifting weights and we are taking those rests, that we are more in that we are not in the anaerobic stage, we're in the aerobic stage, because we don't want to fatigue our muscles way too quickly. We want to stay in a nice constant pace so that we can build strength and we can build stability throughout all of it. And then our final stage, which is that top stage, is our max heart rate. And this is that number that really we start with, and then we create what our percentages are. So this is the greatest number of beats per minute your heart will possibly reach during all strenuous exercise. This does waver a little bit. When I was at one of the gyms, they wore heart rate monitors, and you would see somebody hit a new heart rate max. It's a general equation. So if you are in the best shape of your life and you have the best cardiovascular health, your heart rate max may be higher than what this estimation is, or that heart rate max may feel like it's lower. But this heart rate max gives us a spot to start. And that's where we're going to start, and we're going to do that. So like I said, this chart is for somebody who is 68 years old and their max heart rate is 152. And for some of you, you may think, wow, that is not very high. Or you may think, wow, that's really high. You're going to take this based on your age. So if you have a notebook or you have a journal, please grab that. I'm going to grab my whiteboard because we're actually going to do these equations. And I'm actually going to stop share. And we'll go back to me here for a minute. And we're going to pull up these equations. So for those of you in the chat, if one of you wants to give me your age, if you're comfortable, I will actually do this equation for you specifically. And if nobody drops their age, I'll just use mine because it's nice and easy. You will need a calculator if you were doing this on your own, because I'm going to tell you what, I am not that math, not great with mental math. So calculator helps. Awesome, Elena. So Elena is 36 years old. That is something that we want to remember, because to find our max heart rate, it's 220 minus your age. So you'll take 220 minus 36, because that's how old Elena is, which means her max heart rate is 184. So 184 is Elena's max heart rate. So that, in a perfect world, is as high as her heart rate will go. And that is when she is at all out strenuous exercise, she's heaving and hoeing, she's red to the face, can't talk, having trouble breathing. Like, we are really high up there. We're working really hard. So from there, this is when we then get to use those fun little calculations that I was showing. So we then work our way down. Anaerobic. We want to work at 80 to 90% of our heart rate max. So what you're going to do is you will then take your max heart rate of 184, where that's Elena's, and we're going to times it by 0.8, because we need that 80%. So 147.2 beats per minute. 2, because we also need to find the 90, so that's the low range is 80. 90 is that high range, so we'll do 184 times 0.9 is 165.6 beats per minute. So I got multiple colors here, so I'm going to try to break this up for you. So we got our max heart rate, which is this top one, which we have 184. From there, I took 184 times 0.8 to get us down here to the 147.2, which is going to be that low range of anaerobic. And that high range of anaerobic is going to be 184 times 0.9, which then gets us to 165.6 beats per minute. So you know that you're working in an anaerobic stage when you are hitting somewhere between 147, you can keep it simple, 147 and 165. So we're going to work our way through, and I'm going to do this for all those stages. And I'm actually going to pull this picture back up so you guys can see this if you want to end up working ahead of me. Share screen. And we want to share this one. Okay. So we're back up here. Now we're going to move to the aerobic, which is 70 to 80. The nice part is we've already calculated our 80. So I'm going to write down, and my pen is dying. We're going to try this one. 70 to 80% of your heart rate max. And this is for aerobic. So we haven't figured out our 70, which means we are going to have to take our max heart rate of 184 times 0.7, which gets it to 128.8. And we've already calculated our 80%, which is going to be 147.2 beats per minute. So for Elena to stay in an aerobic stage, which is going to be 70 to 80% of her heart rate max, she's going to have to stay between 128, 129, and 147. It's a really good range to think about because it's really hard to stay at one heart rate consistently the entire time. So when you have this range, you can really think, well, where am I in this? Okay, we're moving on to moderate intensity now. And moderate intensity is 60 to 70% of your heart rate max. And like I said, we've already done that 70%, but we haven't done that 60. So I'm going to do 184 times 0.6, which gets 110.4 beats per minute, to that 70, which is 128.8 beats per minute. So for moderate intensity, we got to be between 110 and 129, somewhere within that range to say that you are in moderate intensity of your heart for your heart rate zone. And then that final stage is that recovery or easy stage. And that is going to be 50 to 60% of your heart rate max, which we already have that 60. So that 60 is 110.4. And that 50, so 184 times 0.5, 92 beats per minute. And then, Alina, if you're still watching, do you know what your resting heart rate is? And I know you're probably moving around in the kitchen right now, so when you look at your watch, you won't know, but do you know what your resting heart rate is off the top of your head? And as I have her answer, I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to stop share. So right here, 220 minus your age is how you're going to find your heart rate max. That is right here, 184. This right here is going to be that anaerobic, your aerobic, your moderate, and then your easy and recovery. So knowing these ranges and creating these ranges based on how old you are is all you need to know. You just need to know your age. And that's why I said these are general. Like, they're not going to be specific because there is no difference between male and female. It's a general equation. So biggest thing is kind of just keep it in mind that if you end up a little bit higher or a little bit lower, it's a range for a reason. And just becoming aware of where you are falling in these ranges. So Elena, you're currently at 80, so you're still within your resting stage, but according to my watch, resting is 69. Perfect. 69 resting. So this right here is really good to see that she's at 69 when she is resting. When she's moving around a little bit more, probably through the kitchen, doing a little bit more thing, picking up the kids, she's going to fall more into the 92 to 110. Well, when she's going out for her walks with the kids in the stroller, she's probably pushing pretty good right here. She's getting anywhere between 110 and 128. Well, then she's moving up and maybe she's out there for a little bit longer walk. She's starting to run with the kids. She can still talk. She's now out between 129 and 147. Well, now we're getting up here and she doesn't have the kids and she's out on her own, which means she's probably getting up to 147 to 165. And then it's very rare that we ever hit our max. I'm going to be honest. I think I hit my max like a handful of times in a year. And it really depends on the type of exercise and the amount of training that I've done. Some of you may hit that max as you start to move into more exercise because you are a little more unconditioned, which means it's gonna elevate the heart rate a lot quicker. Whereas if you are more conditioned and you do more cardiovascular health and you do more cardiovascular training, it's gonna take a little bit longer to get up to that max heart rate. Does that make sense? Elena, Cherry, Jamie, anyone else who was on, do you guys have any questions as we are going through that equation? I'm going to give you, anyone who dropped a zone, I'm going to get you that photo, and I'm also going to put the equation. So I'll send you this, and then I'm going to also send you one with the 220 minus your age and a breakdown of it. Awesome, Elena. And I know this is yours, so I'm going to send it to you so you have it, and all you got to do is transfer it to your notebook. Okay. So we've gone over how to calculate your heart rate max. What is a good heart rate for your age, or resting heart rate for your age? Anywhere between 60 and 100. Why should you care about your heart rate? Like I said, it's a great way to figure out how intense or light that you are working, and to make sure that you are training the correct way. Like I said, if you're trying to train for endurance and you are running and your heart rate's at 80 to 90% of your max, you're not going to be in that endurance factor, and it's going to take you longer to actually reach that goal if you're not training the correct way. So it's just a really good way to become aware of your body. And it's also really good to know if you start to feel your stress levels go higher and that heartbeat faster, see where that heart rate goes. Oh, okay. It's a little bit higher right now. And take a few deep breaths. Can you feel it start to get lower? Can you actually see the number get lower? And I know not all of you have watches, so I'm going to teach you how to take your heart rate if you don't know. Some of you may already know, or you find it a way that I'm not going to teach you. But I also think it's important to know how to take your heart rate, whether it's just for your own knowledge, or somebody's asked you your heart rate, or maybe you're just in a stressful situation and you need to just take it so you can then calm yourself down. So awesome. Glad it makes sense. So we're going to move on to how to take your heart rate. And I'm actually going to take my watch off, and because I like to take it on my left wrist, just because I feel like I can feel better on my right. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your arm and you're going to bring your palm up to the sky. And exactly where this awesome little tan line I have is where I'm going to put my fingers, or just right here on the outside. And I like to drop my hand kind of down by my belly because it kind of relaxes it. And you're going to move your fingers, just your 2 fingers here, up and down just a little bit until you can feel a pulse. And it may take a little bit. And sometimes, there you go. So once you find that pulse, you want to then watch a clock for either 15 or 20 seconds. I don't ever suggest watching it for a full minute because we are going to end up counting for way too long. So with that being the case, I'm going to pull up my timer right now so that I can watch this. So what's going to happen is I'm going to find that pulse and I'm going to watch the timer. And for 15 to 20 seconds, I'm going to count how many pulses that I feel. So, and start. Okay, so in 15 seconds, I like 15 because it's shorter. I had 17 pulses that I counted. So what I'll do is I'll take 17 times 4, because 15 goes into 60 4 times. And that means my resting heart rate, or my heart rate currently, is 68. And I can almost guarantee that when I put this watch back on, it's going to tell me that. And it's funny how you will sometimes feel after exercise that pulse is moving so quickly that you can barely count it. And that means that you're in a very high state and you can actually feel that through your chest. Another way to do it is kind of up here along your jawline, coming down. You may also be able to feel it. I find that's harder to find your pulse up there. You kind of got to push in a little bit more. It's harder to find definitely when you're talking. So I really like the pulse here. It's really easy and nice to take on someone else. So if you have a family member and they're like, how will you take my heart rate? You now know how. And really, you just move those fingers around until you can find it. Time yourself for 15 or 20 seconds. If you go 15, times that number that you've counted by 4. If you go by 20 seconds, times that number by 3. You just want to get up to 60 seconds because that's how we determine is how many beats per minute. Okay. So those were the main questions that had come up. I know Jamie had one earlier, and I wanted to make sure that I answered it. Okay, her question was, do I really need to use my monitor when working out? If you were training for something specifically, so if you were training for that endurance, Jamie, it's going to give you the best data to wear that monitor so that you can track and see when you look back. And I know you are a data person to say, oh, okay, I am staying within my range. I'm training the correct way. Same reason I wear my watch. I get done, I look at all my workouts. I like to see where was my intensity, not just based on how I felt, but like how did my heart react to the activity that I was doing? Was it spinning and did it take me longer to get that heart rate up? Was it weightlifting and literally that heart rate skyrocketed? So if you have a monitor, I really do suggest using it because you don't have to sit there and count your pulse. But if you're also just not super interested in that data that comes behind it, you don't have to wear it. If you are specifically training for something, you have one, I do recommend wearing it so you know you are training in the right mode. So you're not over here doing high intensity workouts when you're working on endurance, or you're on a rest day and your heart rate's really high. It just gives you that data and allows you to remember, oh crap, I worked a little too hard during that rest day. Like, we've all done it. So it's just more data. So the more data you want to learn about yourself, definitely wear it, but it is not mandatory. I have a Fitbit, and it tracks my heart rate, my resting, but it also tracks my my workouts. And it also lets me know, and I'm going to show you, I actually brought it up. We'll see. So this is really cool. This is one of the things that I absolutely love about Fitbit, and I don't have any other watches, so I can't tell if I assume others do this, but mine, I don't think I can turn this sideways. Nope, so we're just gonna keep it small. So right here, we'll see. It shows me that, oops, of course I clicked on that. It shows me my highs and lows. So high, it says 70, and low, it says 62. And this is for the past 30 days. So I can see my graph go up and down, and every single day I will see what my heart rate is, and that the way it's a little bit harder to see, my resting throughout the day. But then if I click on it, it shows me where my spikes are. Well, I had to work on it at that point. So of course there's gonna be a spike there. And it gives me, what zone was I in? Was I in the fat burn? Was I in the cardio? Was I in anaerobic? Was I in aerobic? Was I in moderate? So having your data just allows you to have a better understanding of how hard you're working or how not hard you are working. So if you want to use a watch or anything, Fitbit, I swear by them. I love Fitbit. But I do also have a normal heart rate monitor that goes around here that came with my bike. Really anything that tracks that heart rate. And if you find that you've found something that's not super accurate, remember, just use your fingers, take that pulse and go to either 15 or 20 seconds, then multiply by 4 or 3. Any other questions that are coming up? I know we covered a lot today, and I didn't dive super deep because this is something where really, unless you're someone who wants to only track your heart rate, you don't really need to know every single thing about it. You need to know the basics of, are you in the correct ranges? How to calculate your ranges, and what's your resting heart rate look like? So I want to know insights and takeaways from today's training. And I also there will be no live call next week. So as you guys are putting your insights and takeaways in the comments, I'm going to give you updates. So next week, there is no live call. I will actually be getting to meet Jamie and Danielle in person, get to see them in person next week. So there will be no live training, but at noon, same time, in noon in the group, there will be a group fitness class and a recipe that will be posted just like any other time that there's no training. So be on the lookout for those. There will still be, in case you missed an email, in case you missed that post, that you still get access to that. And then the following week, we are going to be back for our Move and Learn workshop. That's where we put on our shoes and we get outside. And 90% of the time, I'm not in front of the computer, I'm on my phone. So to participate, you got to click that Zoom link and join in, even if you just keep your screen black. And we're going to be talking about fad diets and kind of the ups and downs of how either the names have changed, even though it's all the same, or it's just kind of one of those where This is a new one. This is an old one. This is one that's still in play. We're just going to kind of talk about fad diets because I've been hearing some people talk about them recently and figured it might as well be a good conversation topic. And we're going to be doing that in our Move and Learn workshop when we're outside walking or on your treadmill or wherever that is. Cherry says, all good info, great for homeschool lesson with math and health. Yes, absolutely. Have them calculate it. And Cherry, there is a different, I will check into it to make sure, because that is the adult equation. I'll see if there's a different equation for children. Oh, awesome. I'm glad you found your pulse on both your neck and your wrist. I'm going to check and see if there's a children's calculation that's different. And if so, I'll send it to you. And if not, I'll just let you know that it's the same. So they're figuring it out the correct way if you want them to figure out their own. Awesome. So that is all we have for today. I will see you guys in 2 weeks live, but look for next week's post on a class and a recipe. And if you guys have any other topics like April had, just shoot me a message. Ask me, have you ever done a training on this, or will you do a training on this, or any ideas you have, and I'm happy to train on them. As I'm creating October content, the more you send me, the more likely they are to get published sooner because I haven't created October yet. So have a great day, you guys, and I will see you all in 2 weeks live.